Hello everyone, I'm Benjamin from Jamin Studios and welcome back to another video. In today's video we will be doing drop items and how to pick items up and put them in your inventory. As such, right there, you can see that I have placed down 3 item drop scenes into our world, and that we can see that this new zone over here is added as well as a drop area for our inventory, so we can drop items on the ground if we don't want them, or we want to go pick up another item, say, and we can just come back and pick it up and put it in our inventory. So let's just get started right away. First things first, we're going to be working on our dropping the item. So we want to go to our inventory here, and you can see that we have the area here, the drop item zone. So this is actually a panel, and we're going to come over here. I haven't really imported anything. I just went over to custom styles and put style box flat and customized the color and how see-through it is with that. What the important thing about the panel is that it has a signal called GUI input that has an event. So if it gets clicked, if a certain button's pressed, then it will be sent through the GUI input. We're not going to be creating a signal in this here. We're actually going to be creating that and connecting it to our inventory manager. So we're going to go to the scripts here. Once you've created this, we're going to go to our script, the inventory manager, and we're going to come up to the on inventory ready. So this is a signal that's sent when our inventory is ready, and that we are trying to connect these slots to the GUI input you see here. Now, this is only specific to our inventory and not the chests. So if the inventory name is inventory, then we want to connect that drop item zone to the GUI input to the function on this, the on GUI input slot. We're only doing this on the inventory because it's only in the inventory scene. So we have that now connected to the on GUI input slot. The slot here is null. Now this can be changed. The only thing is that the slot is a slot class. It's a script that we've created. So we can send through any script we want. The only thing though is that I have not created a script for the drop item zone because there's not a need to have a script for this. The only time I would actually need it is if we had multiple things we're doing with inventories that have multiple areas to click on, like slots and just other areas like that. Then we would need a script for it so that we can keep track, like, okay, that's the drop zone. Let's drop the item. That's a crafting zone, things like that. Then we're going to need such things. So now that we have it connected to the on GUI input slot, let's see what we have here. We have the if slot. Remember, the drop item zone is null, so we do not have a slot. This if slot just tells us, okay, this is going to be controlling items in the inventories and not dropping them. So we're going to just skip all of this. I didn't change any of it. You can see it's the empty slot, the different items, and the same items, and then you're just picking up an item in your inventory. So we're going to keep going down here to this else. This is if we are not clicking a slot, we are actually clicking the drop item, or really just anything else that's not a slot, just null in general. Then we're going to try and drop the item. And we should have an item in hand. If it's null, or if the item in hand is null, then we don't want to do anything because we're not dropping anything. So we want to make sure that we have an item in hand, and you can see drop item, and we have a little function here that passes through the name and the quantity of our item that's in our hand. And you can see that we now submit a signal, or emit a signal called drop item. We're getting the position, which is our player position. We're doing the item name and item quantity that we have passed through. So now we can save that here for the inventory manager. And the next step would be connecting this dropped item signal. Now we would have to go to our main though to actually connect that signal, because we can't, we should drop it we should send the signal to the main function, or the main function of our world. And you can see here, that's what I have set up. So we go manager, inventory manager, connect dropped item to our main script, and now we've called it on drop item. You can see position, item name, item quantity. I've also created a class right here called ItemDrop, which is the or not sorry, not a sorry, a class, but a scene, a packed scene that we're going to instance later. And you can see that I have broken up this function into two. We have here removing the item scene from our item in hand. Once we remove that, we will then create an item drop. We only do this because they both have different properties uh, in our world here. Because the item is just the items in the inventory, and then item drop is the items in the world. Since they are two different things, we want to make sure that we separate them and delete when we need to. And so when we pick up the item, we just delete the item drop, and then it'll be an item in hand, which is what happens within the item drop. Once we pick it up, it sends a signal and then gets deleted. And so that's what we have here. We're going to delete the item in hand and create an item drop with the given parameters, item name, item quantity, and put it at the position vector. So with that, we now are able to drop items out of our inventory. Now the thing is that we need to actually pick items up for it to be useful, because why would you drop an item out of your inventory if you can't pick it up? Like, it's just common sense. So let's go figure out that. We have the item drop scene here. This is what we created earlier in our series here. I'll leave a link up to the video on the top right, just so you can go back and look at it. But basically, this is what we're going to be trying to pick up, and you can see that our collision layer and mask is up to date, as it is an item drop, and it's looking for the environment, chest, and item drop, and other item drops. So it's going to interact with the environment. When it's being picked up, it'll actually flow and go to our player. So if it hits like a rock, then it's going to get stuck at that rock. That's okay. That's just, I don't want it to flow over a rock. I think that's just weird, to me at least. Maybe not to you. But it honestly, it depends on the environment, and it depends on the coder, really, if you want to keep the environment or not. We're not really going to be interacting with the player, because if we interact with the player and you cannot pick up the item, then it just becomes a rock, like a wall, and it gets really hard to move around. So you want to make sure that it's not interacting with the player. But don't worry, we'll have something else that interacts with the item drops just in case. Then we wanted to interact with chests. Chests are part of the environment, so that's why I have that. And then item drops. You want to make sure, I have this because I want to make sure my item drops, they don't stack on each other, so it's really hard to see what you're getting. And if there are stacking on each other and you want to pick up a certain item, say like there's an apple and a sword, but you want to pick up the sword, then you're going to pick up both items, and maybe you pick up the apple. Just because like that's how the game worked, that's how your luck went. So that's why I have item drops, so that the items don't really stack up on each other. It's very easy to pick them up, and it's very easy to actually see what you got. And that's our item drops. So now let's go to our player to actually interact with these. You can see now we have this huge circle around our player. This is going to be our pickup zone. It's going to be very similar to our chest zone that we created in the earlier series, but it's going to be only looking at items. So you can see here that our mask and layer, there's nothing there, but in our mask, we're literally just looking at item drops, because that's the only thing this thing will do, is look at the item drops. So let's take a look at our node here, and you can see that we have 3 signals. Item in range, which I'll get to later. We have the body entered and body exited, which is connected to itself. If we come in here, we can see we have a variable with item in range. This keeps track of all the items that actually go into it and go out of it. as you can see with these two functions. And then that third signal that I talked about earlier, item in range. So as soon as we are able to pick up an item, that's what we are doing here. We're looking at inventory slots. The slots, we're just making it a little more easier. Instead of typing inventory slots all over again, we'll just say slots instead. And we're basically looking to see if we can actually pick up this item. Most likely we can, because we don't have that many items and our inventory is actually pretty big. So that's why we're able to pick them up. And when we are able to, we'll send the signal. If not, then we're just breaking it and we're leaving it. So then that signal gets sent and it's actually connected to our player script. You can see here, pick up drops, and this is what's connected to that items in range signal. And it tells and we're trying to get the item that just entered here in the items in range in the pickup zone. And we're telling it, hey, my player is picking up the item. So we're going to tell the item to pick up itself and come towards the player. And this will then flow to the player. And when it gets at a certain distance, then we do the whole process in reverse with the item drop. So then the item drop scene will then get deleted, but it will first send a signal out to create an item scene in our inventory. And with that, we should be able to drop items and then pick them up. Move around, drop this whole bucket of milk here. You can see it's right there. We'll be able to go over to these item drop scenes and pick up these items. We have 7 apples now, a bucket of milk, and now we have 8 apples. So thank you for sticking around to the end of this episode. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns about the content that I make or this video, please leave them down below in the comment section. Without further ado, this has been Ben Jammin from Jammin Studios. Have a good day.